A nonprofit group is trying to help elders by reducing their social isolation. To tell us about FriendshipWorks and its volunteers is its executive director, Janet Seckel-Cerrotti. Thank you very much for being with us, Janet. I want to ask you about what is that you're doing, because this is like with things, this is what normally happens in a family with all your relatives taking care of the older folks, but I guess that's not as easy to do these days as it used to be.
It's not, because we're living much longer, and sometimes not everybody has big families. There are some people who have no family, or their family's stretched or very far away, and even their family may need some support, or you still may want a friend. Many people live to quite older years, and I would say you're never too old to have a new friend in your life.
Why is this so important for the elders?
I think it's important for all of us of all ages to have a network of friends, at least have one person in your life. Not everybody needs a huge community. Some people don't like to be in groups, some do, but all of us at any age need someone who cares about you and for whom you can care about. And so in many ways, we're really matchmakers for older adults who, because of frailty or vision loss, or just because their friends have passed away or are frail themselves, that really we help to create a network for them, and at least to bring one good friend into their life.
Well, before you became executive director, going back a bit, you started with this organization, or at least its predecessor, as a volunteer. So what got you started?
Well, it used to be called Match Up Interfaith Volunteers, and we brought together people of all faiths and backgrounds to care about elders, because all of us, no matter what our backgrounds are, that is something that we have in common. And I always cared about older adults. I always liked them when I was younger. Their stories made you feel good. They had time that other people didn't. Really believed in volunteering, that if you can, that one should volunteer, and that this is a way of bringing many people together.
Now, I imagine there is that first stage where a volunteer goes in to talk to a total stranger. How do you break the ice?
Well, the people who volunteer do come, through us, and we vet them and we do interviews, and any of the older adults who are referred to us by a friend, a family, a nurse, a social worker, a neighbor, so they know that we're doing this, and a staff member will go with the volunteer on the first visit. So the staff member has already visited with and met the older adult and the senior, and then we will match them together because we think they have common interests. They live near each other, or maybe somebody works near where the older adult lives. Our volunteers are people of ages 18 through 90, so it's possible also that the volunteer may be older than the person that they're visiting at times. But we have many people in their 20s and 30s and 40s who volunteer, but we also have people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s who are volunteering. And one thing I just want to say is that it's not, I think we lose a lot when we don't integrate older adults into our lives, no matter what age we have. And it's also great for an elder who may not have grandchildren or children nearby to have the opportunity to bring the world into them and the new generation in and their values.
Thinking back over your own experience as a volunteer, was there anything that stands out about what was going on there with your visits and your interactions that made a difference?
Well, I think just listening. We don't listen to each other very much. Everybody's really busy. And even as a volunteer, and I see this with our volunteers now, they're so busy and, with their life. And then when they go to visit somebody, that's just special and sacred time. So you're there to listen to somebody's story, to give somebody the opportunity to share about their life, the news that they watched, to remember. So I think a lot of it is about listening and saying, I really care about you. I'm here because by choice. Nobody's paying me to be here, and I enjoy coming to visit with you. And for the person who may be somewhat socially isolated or just needing another friend or contact in the world, it's also wonderful to have somebody to care about. I think as we sometimes forget, it's not just about giving, but allowing somebody else to give to you as well. And that's sometimes what we miss as we retire and get older, is does anybody need me? But even the younger person, the volunteer, needs someone to listen to them. And often the match, the host, has that as well.
This has been the news, and we're talking with Janet Seckel-Cerrotti from FriendshipWorks. Janet, I think there's a common notion that when people get older, there's some sort of a deficit going on. But on the other hand, what about these younger volunteers? I mean, there are things that they need that they can get from, even as you said, just listening. What is it that's so important about that?
I think it's about connection. And in our, very social media world and people being busy, and particularly in a city like Boston where people are racing around, and it can be a lot of fun for many people, but it can also be very lonely. And it can be lonely for the 20 or 30 or 40-year-old as much as it can be for the 60, 70, 80, 90-year-old. So to be able to sit down and to actually make that time every week. I mean, for most of us, there's nobody we see every week except for if we're living with somebody or if we're working. Trying to get together with a friend, you sometimes have to make dates 3 weeks, 6 weeks ahead of time. But to make a commitment of an hour to a week where you see the same person all the time and have that connection and follow with somebody, and if they're not well, you can also be there for them. It's amazing to me what volunteers will do for somebody who was a stranger just a year ago, but they chose to befriend, and the other way around as well. We also have volunteers who are not friendly visitors, but medical escorts will go with someone to a medical appointment, stay with them, make sure they get home safely, sometimes go into the appointment with them. So it's not a weekly thing, it's when they're able to. So some of our volunteers are making commitments on a weekly basis, and others are doing it a little bit more sporadically, or helping, we call it friendly helping, having somebody, you need to clean out your closet, but you can't get down on the floor anymore to do that, or your vision you may have low vision or vision impaired, so you can't read some of your mail or forms, and so somebody else can come in and do that. There's no reason for you to isolate yourself because of maybe some frailty or loss of vision or hearing. There are other people out there who can be your eyes and ears and hands for you.
It also occurs to me that unless you have those eyes and ears walking into the apartment or the house, a lot of problems will be unaddressed. I mean, you might have somebody who's hoarding, and then they trip over stuff that's being accumulated, and they break their hip. I mean, things can really go downhill pretty fast.
Yeah, and that's such a great point, because also even somebody who's visiting every week will notice, oh, this person doesn't look the way that they've looked for the past few weeks. They're looking frailer. There's no food in the refrigerator. There's a smell that's going on that they didn't have before. And that volunteer is often the person who will call somebody else to get the help that this person needs. And you don't even realize yourself that you're diminishing or you're dehydrated or your health isn't as good. So having somebody who sees you regularly really makes such a difference. And for many people, there isn't somebody who sees them every week.
Well, for volunteers, I guess there's some kind of commitment involved in terms of time or how long they do this. So what does that mean usually?
Usually, so we ask for a 10 to 12 month commitment. Sometimes it's 8 months, and for our friendly visiting, it is a weekly or every other week commitment. We also have Pet Pal volunteers who do that for a year, but that's our outreach to assisted living and nursing home residents, people who live there, to bring the unconditional love of a pet, who people really miss and can't have their pets anymore. But for our friendly visiting and friendly helping, it means asking them, usually it's 6 months to a year, and doing a certain amount of escorts or a certain amount of friendly helping tasks. We should mention that if people want to find out some more information and maybe get involved, what's the best way to do that? Well, they can call us on the phone, the old-fashioned way, 617-482-1510. But also we are online, and we have a web page, and we also have a page there if you want to refer or to volunteer or donate, and that's www.FW4Elders, F like friend, W like work, the number 4, and elders.org. Thank you very much for being with us. Thank you. Janet Seckel-Cerrotti from FriendshipWorks.